Welcome. It is my great pleasure to introduce a UniSA Business School case to you, which is uniquely South Australian, but at the same time not just of local but also of global relevance. Our job here at the university is to educate the next generation of responsible global leaders. So I invite you to learn from the future, a future that is designed at Alberton Primary School, Kilkenny Primary School and Blair Atholl North, as well as Woodville High School. These schools are not ordinary schools, they are garden schools. That means they have a big school garden where they grow vegetables and fruits, they harvest those produce and ultimately design a meal and sit down to have that meal and join that meal as a community. It's a wonderful initiative because as those gardens grow, the schools produce more produce that is then eventually sold off to a pioneer in the sustainable food industry. The pioneer is Sarah's Sisters Sustainable Cafe up in Semaphore in the northwest of Adelaide. So they get all these wonderful produce. Once they turn this into exciting meals in the restaurant, the waste that comes from the restaurant, the organic waste, is picked up by committed citizens in the community and turned into compost. So what we experience here is a very interesting model that links schools in the area with a sustainable cafe, with dedicated citizens, and it's sort of a full cycle model from cradle to grave, if you will, which is really a fantastic example. But on the educational side, what is so noticeable is that these schools not only instill a sense of pride and enjoyment and education around healthy and sustainable futures, if you will, in those children and students, but that they also instill a sort of sense of innovation and creativity that otherwise would be missing. So not all of them will turn into great chefs and creative chefs in the future, but they learn the essentials of healthy eating and what sustainability in a real world sense means to them. So it's a great experiment and a great example of at the intersection of social innovation, community engagement and responsible leadership. I invite you to enjoy the videos that we have put together for you, and let's look for yourself.
Sustainability is probably about starting from scratch with growing. Like there's probably a lost generation of kids that haven't grown vegetables, or their families haven't grown vegetables. Same on the cooking side. And then we go through like recycling, looking after the environment. Kids do a 40-minute garden lesson each week and a 90-minute kitchen lesson each week. So we grow the produce, harvest it, and it follows through into the kitchen where they'll cook.
And that, guys, that weed, when it gets seeds, how many seeds do you think it might have on it?
About 800.
Not more.
1,000.
More.
1,000.
More.
2,000.
No. 200,000 seeds. Actually.
Oh my God.
One plant. So imagine that if that drops its seeds, that's why we've got it growing everywhere.
We've got from reception year 1 through to grade 6, 7s. And the longer they're in the program, the better they become. Like in the kitchen, year 6, 7s don't need any supervision, and probably in the garden they're pretty good as well. With our sustainability group, we supply him probably $15 to $30 worth of produce a week, whether it be chicken eggs, duck eggs, or unusual vegetables that we grow, or just run-of-the-mill vegetables when we've got a surplus.
So now we've got this lovely produce from Kilkenny. And again, their specialty is chilies, which is wonderful, and some more tomatillos, and this a little bit of silver beet, a few other things. And Tony had brought in another winter melon. And these things are so good because we make that soup out of it. Such an easy soup to make and so distinctive. So, and that's most of it. Oh, it's a lovely pumpkin.
Schools are one of the biggest wastes of public infrastructure that we have. They tend to be used about a quarter of a day, 5 days a week and 200 days a year. So a lot of underutilised use of not only the buildings but also the property. And we're about 1.2 hectares of land that the school takes up. So for us there's a real opportunity to make use of that through connection with community and making schools become more of a community hub. So we're increasingly having our space used by other organisations and community groups. The project really started from a relationship with Sarah Sisters Cafe. We had a very modest garden at the time, and we had a notion of building it into something and incorporating food and nutrition into it, but probably didn't have that particular purpose at the time. So having Sarah Sisters come on board as somewhere that we could develop an entrepreneurial relationship, our children involved in actually making some money out of producing the food, and knowing that food was going to be used freshly and put to good use for some great meals, gave us that, I guess, purpose behind it. Then there's the global perspective as well around the notion of food security, and so part of what we've been trying to do is model at a smaller level the notion that you can provide a significant amount of food in a small amount of space, and that space can be an urban environment. And the area that we're standing on at the moment that is totally green all around us has got a layer of bitumen underneath, so that you can grow food on top of the ground if necessary. And certainly we've got those areas of soil as well, but just trying to show children and other organisations, governments, that small scale can actually model big things as well.
With the early childhood, or all of the primary schools and high schools, it actually can make a difference. You can see that this will make a difference down the track. It will be something which will form a really big response to climate change. And this is a generation which, of course, are going to have to wear what we're giving them. So they're going to have to do it right, and that's what excites us. So it's grown from working with one school to working with 4 or 5 schools, community composting network. Need to look at it and say, what do we get out of this? But from our point of view, our association with the schools and things we do give us a huge point of difference advantage, which means gives us a financial advantage. We're just about to start our 40th year in business, and we've got to be doing something right. A lot of that is interconnecting with the community and seeing yourself as part of the community, not too interested in being celeb chefs, but we're interested in what we can do with food. We love food, and what we love to see is these kids loving food as well. In the early days when the teachers were describing this to us, they said, okay, this is, especially here at Athol North, this is a huge, lovely garden we've got, and they do everything. They grow, they get seeds, go into the kitchen, prepare the food, then go sit down around tables and share the food. A big part of it is looking at Australia's history from an agriculture point of view, and then you have to look at Indigenous civilisation. We're now finding out, in fact, that it is the most advanced civilisation in terms of agriculture, in terms of other things. So they're the things we have to respect.
500.
500 what? 500 grams?
Yes.
Do you want to weigh it? Do you want to feel it? How much do you think?
I think it's 115.
Let's see. I'm going to guess 1,800.
Oh, 1 kilogram. 1 kilogram.
Oh, it is 2,201 grams. 2.2 kilos, absolutely. The community excitement about what we do. We've got a Facebook page that we share what we harvest and pick, and the things we're doing, and the interest from that is great, and just the scope of what the students are cooking and understanding about where food comes from. That's brilliant. Yeah.
I know the social planners talk about now how do you create a village, but really it's about identifying where all those different resources are within your community, and thinking what have we got excess of, what's being wasted, who can use what, and all those little tradable things which usually are voluntary transactions is actually what makes a community rich, but never show up on any sort of economic exchange. And so us getting the scraps from the local cafe and the coffee, or what we talk about adopting a cafe, like just the cafe that you already go to perhaps, or the shop you already go to, just ask, where's their coffee going? And if it's not going anywhere significant, you can say, well, can I take your coffee home today? And so you've just turned an ordinary transaction, you've deepened it and made it more relevant. And you've harnessed an asset that was otherwise going to be a cost and a detriment and a harm to the environment. this coffee, which will provide a nice layer. Should be able to get nearly all of that in there before it settles. And it seems a tiny bit messy, but this is really a very clean process. The chooks get first choice, and over time you learn what they like and what they don't like. They love the fresh greens. For some reason, they love strawberries because you don't realise it, but strawberries are actually got seeds all around them. So I just give them some of the goodies. And it's actually greens that makes yellow chicken eggs yellow. People think it's the corn and things, but it's actually, if they don't get greens, you don't get those lovely golden eggs that is the hallmark of free-range eggs. Chooks don't like bananas, but worms love them. So we've got a little worm farm going here. So even before I've got to the compost, right, I've got compost worms. Don't know how visible they are here, but you can see some of the worms coming through in the compost. It's quite a moist one at the moment. So they like it rich and dark. It's quite extraordinary when you think about it. If instead of everybody being a burden on the environment, in fact, all of these little urban households are actually doing environmental services, but also for their own good and also for their community good.